So moving on to the day's special address, may I please invite Mr. Sreeji Gopinathan, Chief Information Officer, Lupin Limited, and today he is going to speak on the best practices for taking drug manufacturing efficiencies to a new level. Over to you, Sreeji.
So there will be that I will tell, which is based on my experience so far, including what I've done in the past, what we are trying to do now in Lupin, and probably some of it might be rhetoric or even questions, which might be valid for all of us as a community. So I'm sure all of us here would have had some experience in managing the manufacturing operations in pharma industry. So there are a lot of basic things that we have to take care. So that is what I call from where we come from. So as far as the basics are concerned, it starts with clearly setting a goal. And that starts with the leadership down to the people on the manufacturing and which products to be manufactured. This can include constraints that we define for certain lines to be doing certain SKUs versus others. This can also include certain expertise that we need to bring into certain lines for delivering specific requirements, and so on and so forth. So it starts with the goal setting, but we all know one thing that is very, very important for us in terms of not having any compromise is the quality and the regulatory standards. We have its own quality standards that is an absolute must to stick to. But we all know there are a lot of other regulations from bodies like FDA and TARI and like, which is again a no compromise, and we are all making sure that we never bypass those. And as a process, we look at what is it that we have now in terms of the systems and process and organization, and what can we improve. We employ different kinds of mechanisms like Six Sigma, lean manufacturing, 5S, and then when you go to quality, we have the 5 whys. You keep asking why until you understand the root cause and the reasons why certain batch is rejected or certain issue is there or whatever. Now, to support this, there are a lot of maintenance activity that needs to be carried out on the equipments and the lines, which keep on running to deliver the quality products that we're manufacturing. And my take is that most of us will be in a sort of preventive maintenance mode at this point in time. So preventive maintenance, in the sense, which equipment has been maintained when is it due for next as per the recommended guidelines, and then go and do the maintenance. But it is not really based on a lot of the data. Some people might have graded up the curve in terms of making proactive, but I think majority of the industry is still in preventive maintenance. Now, given all of that, who is it actually making it happening? It is the people and the related process. So if we have to have consistency in what we are trying to do, the quality of the people, the consistency of the process, and the training requirements to make sure that people change doesn't affect anything, process parameters and process controls are put in place in a consistent manner, etc. We keep on delivering training mechanisms to the people. One of the problems that some of us might be grappling with will be the silos which exist within the departments, between locations, corporate versus site, and all those kind of things. So there's an absolute commitment needed from the leadership to break those silos as much as possible. So these are the basics that we all must be grappling with. Now, when we talk about how do we take it to the next level, there's always a saying that if you keep doing what you're doing, you get what you're getting, right? So you need to embrace the new. And what does that mean? It is actually a technology. Yeah, I mean, digital and data-oriented technology is what is actually going to take manufacturing to the next level. But that by itself cannot. So let's go through that. So again, to achieve that, there are a bunch of things that needs to be done as core technology. I've put in R&D as well there because this is very, very connected, R&D to manufacturing, to quality, and actually even beyond that. So there are a bunch of systems. This is not an exhaustive list, but I put the top ones that we all must be using in our pharma environment. There'll be LIMS, there'll be electronic notebooks, there'll be CTMS, clinical trial management systems, all those kind of things in R&D, so that as much digitization is happening in terms of the research activity and the development activity that we're doing. And when it comes to manufacturing, traditionally we all will have PLCs and HMIs and SCADAs running to make sure that the process parameters are controlled, rejections are managed, products are moved, all those kind of things. But are we really harnessing the power of the data which is coming out of all these equipments and the sensors that we have? So so basically, some of us might be already having systems which is actually capturing this data, and we call it central data acquisition systems. So these central data acquisition systems can actually put the data that is coming out of these different platforms into a historian kind of database, which can then be used for integrating with our batch processing or batch manufacturing systems, or for the data analytics. You might have a data lake, you might be running off databases in isolations, but as long as you can acquire the data, you can put it in a certain central database, then you are able to leverage that to make sense out of what the data actually means, so that you can take some actions beyond that. So we'll come to that a little bit more later. And in quality, you will have quality management systems and LIMS and EDMS. So EDMS, I'd like to spend a minute on that. In many instances, what I've seen is the document management system sort of become a repository of the documents, or sort of a workflow process that we use to get a new document created or the version managed. But if we do not take the effort to make these documents available, readable, where the user needs it, be it on the shop floor or in the lab or wherever it is, if that is not done, this almost kind of becomes a SharePoint, for documents. So the important thing is that not just implement a system like EDMS, but also to really make it useful so that people leverage it on a daily basis. If we don't do that, what happens is people take printouts, they'll have files again, in the shop floor or wherever they are working, and then there is always this problem of version mismatch and things like that. Searchability, everything becomes a problem. Okay. Now, so what we talked just now is about data. Going forward, we really have to see how we're going to, unleash the power of data, and we have to climb up this pyramid, graduating ourselves from, what is the data that we have, what is the information that it contains, which is basically, as you can see there, the who, what, where, when of that data, which tells you, okay, what is this data about? And once you are able to figure out how that came about, that gives you the knowledge of what the data means. Now, once you know what that means, for a deeper understanding, in many instances, you will have to ask why the data is like that. Why is it this data going out of limits in certain conditions? Why is it that this data was okay with every other parameter remaining consistent, but even then this particular data point for a parameter has gone out of bounds? So that kind of why analysis will give you the understanding, and then you have the wisdom to actually leverage the power of data in terms of taking decisions or making it, work for yourself in terms of self-control and things like that, which we will also discuss a little bit more in the subsequent slides. So we all hear about Industry 4.0. I mean, we need to adopt it for ourselves. And this is the Pharma 4.0 framework, which actually, came out by the ISPE organization. So I have borrowed this slide from their article. So basically, the operating model suggests these are the four building blocks of the operating model for us to achieve the objectives of Pharma 4.0, supported by two enablers, which is of course digital maturity and data integrity by design. Now, what does this really mean? Resources. Yeah, resources actually means people as well as non-people. Now we need to make sure that the people that we have here are people who are friendly towards the modern mechanisms that we can leverage. So that's what we call as the workforce 4.0. There will be a considerable effort to really bring them up to speed. So that is one aspect of the operating model. And then you have the information systems, which we all know it's basically the IT systems as well as the engineering systems, which brings in the end-to-end connection of all the data components that we need for the integration and the traceability, which needs to be supported by the leadership and the processes as an organization so that it becomes a company strategy. I mean, if it doesn't become a company strategy, if it is just a manufacturing strategy, or if it is just an IT strategy, it never really achieves the objectives what it's supposed to be. So it starts at the top, and then that needs to be supported through a holistic strategy so that it becomes a DNA of the organization. That contributes to the culture of the organization, where this is going to be really driven as a company-wide initiative. Now, if you really look at this, you will see there are different levels of maturity that you will see. The first level is probably we are all at, which is about computerization. Yeah? So we would have computerized all our processes, be it ERP or the LIMS or AVPR or MIS or whatever it is. The basic sort of computerization would have already happened. Now the next level is about connecting to the business processes. This is where the implemented systems actually stick. And actually, I think we still face a lot of challenge in making the processes stick because there is lack of coordination or lack of change management in terms of what we have implemented versus what it's supposed to do for the business. So the second level of maturity is that connection to the business process. I'm sure some of us are there already, but I know there are still challenges. We also might be doing bits and pieces in terms of creating the data visibility, the so-called reporting and the dashboarding mechanisms from a data point of view is where most of the organization is. We are trying to graduate above that and get into an interpretation mechanism where the data can actually look at the complex connections between the data elements using a data lake or in a joint databases or whatever. Yeah, you are able to interpret the data and then create findings to understand what is the effect of that particular data. Okay, this is where you are now starting to use the power of data to control certain elements of the processes, not by just creating visibility in a dashboard where a human takes a look at it and decides, okay, this is what I need to do now, but you're actually making the data work and come out with findings so that some of the decisions are already taken for the human. Okay. Once you are there, you are now able to probably look at the next level of maturity. We all talk about it. Can we predict? We talk about preventive maintenance earlier. Can we get into predictive maintenance, a proactive maintenance? Can we look at the PLC data or the machine data that we are getting, and by looking at the patterns over time, build models where you can say, okay, your standard SOP might be saying you need to do the maintenance in another 2 weeks, but actually the data that is coming is telling me that you probably need to do the maintenance in another couple of days, something like that. So that is where the power of data starts. So here I think it is still very, very early days for most of us, but as we are trying to take some initial baby steps in these spaces, and this predictive nature of it need not necessarily be in the manufacturing side. It can be in the quality side, where you can actually predict this particular sample that you have taken. Instead of going through a series of full prolonged tests, depending on the process parameters that you have seen, you can already predict that a particular test is needed to see whether this is actually pass or fail, because the algorithm is already saying that this batch is probably, this sample is already going to fail. So you don't need to go through the full volume of tests that you need to do. You can do a particular couple of tests and confirm, yes, it is a fail. Yeah, that kind of analysis is also possible. The final level is probably, the nirvana state is where it is called self-control. This is something that is prevalent in other industries like automotive, for example. It's a continuous manufacturing line, where the flow of the raw pack materials is planned. It is continuously coming to the line. Everything is automated so that it keeps on running. The pharmaceutical industry has been talking about it for a while. There are a number of, is it possible technically? Yeah, answer is yes. But there are a lot of constraints that we have here. One is the capital investment for all the equipments and probably the conveyors and everything that will be needed to bring the raw pack onto the lines, etc. The second constraint will be the regulations itself, because we know we are a heavily regulated sector, and hence to do anything goes through a very comprehensive end-to-end validation approach, and the CSV and the equipment qualification and all those things, and other regulation that impacts is very difficult to manage, and hence it's very time consuming. But this is the nirvana that probably the sector is looking forward to achieve, and hopefully we will get there sometime. So moving on, I would like to take a look at, I won't spend too much time on the R&D slide, but I just wanted to put it out there, because I think there is a lot of things to be done in the R&D space as well. For example, how can we leverage the artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms for faster drug discovery or drug repositioning, which will end up in faster trials, and will help us to get quicker to the market, and also will lower the cost of R&D. In this day and age where R&D as a total percentage of the budget is a challenge across the pharma industry, and hence it is important that we look at this as well. But we'll move on to manufacturing. So there are multiple technology areas that we can leverage to really take manufacturing operations to the next level, and there's need to be looked at across the value chain and not just from a manufacturing point of view. So the first one we all heard about for a long time is the Internet of Things, and mostly this will play a role in the packaging. Yeah. So how do we package in such a way that the data is available on where the particular product is in the value chain, and we are able to even go to the extent of measuring what is in that can of medicines. Is it possible to even get the data so that we can have an auto replenishment to the patient and all those kind of things? That is again the ultimate vision. But to start with, the tracking across the value chain, traceability in the value chain, that could be a good starting point. Yeah. RFID, we have been talking about it for a while, but it has its own difficulties, because you need scanners for RFIDs beyond your warehouses to be able to read them, right? So IoT is an area. So this is not just for actual product. This is also used for actual transportation. For example, cold chain. When you want to transport certain medications in a cold chain, it is possible to have IoT in the truck, which will monitor the temperature and make sure the quality is maintained. All those kind of things. Moving on, vision systems. I think some companies have already taken good advantage of this in terms of manufacturing quality as well as packing quality. You are able to constantly have vision systems look at different properties, not just of the packing, but also of the actual tablets, or even the consistency of the liquid that comes through can be managed through vision systems. NAR also has been around for a while, but in pharma there are many areas where we can actually leverage. For example, there is in a batch run, for example, it says it has to run for 6 hours or 8 hours or whatever the number of hours is. but you don't know actually where that particular mix has reached the consistent quality that it needs. But if you can have NAR probes in the line itself, in the mix itself, then you are able to get the real-time data, which will help you decide whether the batch can be stopped or not. So probably the prescribed time might be 6 hours, but then the NAR data shows maybe it is ready a half an hour earlier, or maybe it needs another half an hour of mixing to get that consistent quality. So there are a lot of use cases like that which can be leveraged using NAR. I think again the validation oriented concerns becomes a constraint, but I think we have to be a little bit more bold as a sector, as an industry, to leverage these technologies to control our process parameters. Predictive maintenance we talked about. So here, simple SAP, PM module. Traditionally, what we do is, you have everything maintained there, and then it prompts, you take a printout, you go to the machine, you do the activity, you fill paper form, you send it for approval, all those kind of lengthy process. But if you can equip the people on the line with the devices that they need, so that they are prompted on the actions that they need to do on the line, they take the action, they record the action, it immediately goes for approval of the supervisor, and it is done. Yeah, so this becomes a lot more efficient. And for example, we have started doing this in Lupin. I'm sure some others are doing as well. So this is an area where we should be really, this is an easy, low-hanging fruit, I would say. If you can make some infrastructure investment, then you are able to achieve this pretty quickly. Digital twin is a big topic. Again, some of the other industries like airline industries and auto industries are big into this because it is impossible for them to manage all the changes and the testings that they need to do. And I think pharma is a perfect industry to really take a look at this, because again, if you want to do some of the testing online, as we said, the quality and the regulatory standards become a constraint. Even in the digital twin, it will be a constraint, but you are not impacting the actual production itself. So if you want to test out new models or new processes or new changes that you want to bring in, if you have a digital twin, then you simulate that using the process parameter change or device change or whatever it is, so that you can actually see the potential results that you're going to get in a real scenario, and then based on that you can take the action. Okay, so this is I don't think many of us have really gone down this path. People are talking about it, but this is something which will be worth trying out, dabbling with, learning, and see whether we can actually reduce the time that we take in terms of making changes in our manufacturing operations or bringing in new technology in our manufacturing operations. So all of this can really help us to get to a much better control, easier product recalls, reducing the cost, improve productivity, and all those kind of things. Okay, moving on quickly, as far as the quality is concerned, there is a transition that we all need to make from a digital lab to self-control lab almost kind of thing. So at the moment we all have digital labs where we have LIMS sort of things and data analytics and all those things, but 80% of the testing is done in the lab. Sample is taken, it goes through a series of testing. We can bring a lot of technology to make it smoother, like the smart glass or even digital twin can be used here, so that we can reduce the errors and improve the traceability and things like that. But we need to really take massive steps towards automated labs. Can we bring in robots as much as possible? Robots need not be those big looking robots. When I take robots, it's about the testing robots. Can you control the sample preparation from the line? Can you control the sample taking and the sample delivery using robots? It can be automated actually. Once you do that, then the testing protocols themselves can be automated, and you can actually crunch the time. You can have repeatable processes, less prone to manual errors, faster release, and all those benefits are going to come. And the expectation is that 50 to 60% of the testing here can be done in the lab, and the rest can be taken onto the line. So you are saving that much of testing time if you can move in this direction. Again, the ultimate will be to achieve the distributed quality control. Process analytical technology is out there already. Some of us are already using it, but we really need to leverage the mechanisms of NIR type of technology and the AI/ML sort of algorithms, where you take more of the testing to the line. Less than 20% should be actually done in the lab. This saves not only time and process, but also real estate. Okay, the ultimate objective will be real-time release testing, and experience has shown, at least in other industries and also some pilot studies in pharma, has shown that this actually results in less rejection. It is worth going for. But again, as I said earlier, continuous manufacturing needs, if we have to apply that philosophy with the distributed control, the quality control in the line, there's a lot of investment as an industry that we need to take, and hence this becomes a constraint. So the obvious next step for us is to at least get to the automated labs, and then keep working towards as much as distributing the quality control with minimal capital investment. And then when at the right point comes for a particular manufacturing site or a line, you think about whether you can actually make it a continuous process in that site itself. Yeah, this is just a picture, depicting that what it could look like. And in terms of the transition from the digital lab, I've actually taken this from a McKinsey article, digital enabled lab versus automated lab to the actual distributed quality control, where, parametric real-time release can be achieved. I think I have one more slide and then I'll be done. I think I have almost run out of time. Having said all of that, it is important for us to link all those manufacturing operations to supply chain and sales and marketing. Yeah, so it should really, the smart factory is what we are aiming at from a manufacturing point of view. Really need to connect very well to the sales and marketing activities that is going on, distribution activities that is going on, and the subsequent impact that we have in terms of the supply chain. If that is not achieved, again, the entire value chain is not going to give the benefits that the company needs. So I will not talk much about it. This in itself is a large topic, but again, we can leverage a lot of technology in terms of not just the traditional connected planning system, but also leveraging the modern technologies to connect all of this together. So the question that I would like to leave everybody with is, how are we going to go from the journey from batch manufacturing that we have to our nirvana state of continuous manufacturing? It might take time, but this is definitely the direction that we need to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Sreeji, for this really, really informative discourse. So with this, I request our audience to please pose some questions for Sreeji. I think you have the right person among us to pose question, and then he will answer your questions. And with this, Sreeji, we come to our poll Q&A time. So here we have our poll question. And the question is, where are you struggling the most with Industry 4.0? And options are lack of in-house talent to support the development, difficulties with integrating data from various sources, lack of knowledge about technologies, and lack of knowledge about vendors and IT outsourcing partners. So I leave you with the poll question, and let's see what questions we have from our audience. So Sreeji would want to know that as we have got, there are so many challenges faced by pharmaceutical industry. Where do you think that India stands today really in terms of competitiveness, and at what level is our preparedness to combat challenging situations?
I think India as an industry in pharma is, we always say, India is the pharmacy of the world, right? So we are in a pretty good situation compared to some of the other competition that we might have. Of course, there is a long way to go, but are there other better places is the question that you're asking, right? At this point in time, I would say no. Right. Some of the companies would have taken better steps compared to some of the Indian pharma companies that we have. But what I'm seeing is that there is definitely leadership intent and investment also coming in. And the thought process is clearly there in terms of that we need to go there. And there are multiple initiatives that is already running as well. In certain cases, we already have implemented certain systems. I'm talking about the modern technology leverage. Yeah. So we are moving in the right direction, and I think we're pretty competitive from that point of view. And I really, this is an exciting time for Indian pharma because the world is actually looking at us to make this better, and we have to do it.
Right, Shriji, bang on. So with this, we also have our poll answers, and the poll answers are 18% say lack of in-house talent to support development. 43% says difficulty with integrating data from various sources. 25% says lack of knowledge about technologies, and the rest 14% says lack of knowledge about vendors and IT outsourcing partners. Um, to our audience, I also would want to request to please visit our sponsor room and have a look at the content over there, which is relevant and useful for you from the pharma and healthcare industry. So with this, we will be moving on to our next presenter. Thank you so much, Sreeji.